Hey YouTube, it's JP Dillon. Welcome to part 4 of the Pioneer CT-F1250. In part 3 we rebuilt the reel motor and we got all that back together. You can see it mounted there in the motor plate here. So now that we have this apart, one good thing to do is to replace the belts and the idler and clean the idler pulley here, which very commonly gets slick and yucky. So we got to do that. And then once we're done doing that, we can reassemble that along with the direct drive motor, put the capstans back in, and replace the pinch rollers as well. Now there's a couple places you can get your belts and rollers from. I have a preference for the Black Reel Shop, which is in Germany. They seem to make the best quality product. You can look them up on eBay. They are having difficulties with shipping now, because of tariffs and regulations and stuff like that. So there are other alternatives. Do your research, listen to what the people on the tapeheads.net forums say. But the Black Reel people I've had a fairly decent experience with. They sell good belts and pinch rollers. The idler I got from another company in Europe. I forget the name of it, but when I find it I will post it in the description. So changing out the idler is pretty easy. As you can see, there's just a little C-clip there holding it on. And then that hub comes off, and we just remove the tire from the hub and put the new tire on the hub and reinstall it. On a side note, it's a good idea to check the movement of these cassette reels. Make sure that they slide freely and don't bind. If they bind, look for small hairline cracks in the hub. And that's a pain to fix, but you can usually fuse them with a soldering iron and get them back together if they stick. But these ones are in good shape. Also, if you have to disassemble the hubs, make sure to note where the springs go, because they are not interchangeable. This one activates the clutch on the reel hub, and this one is the rewind clutch. If you swap them, it won't work. So yeah, let me get that C-clip off and we'll take a look at the idler wheel itself. So there's the hub with it off. You can see there's a fiber washer on front. Behind it, there's a spring. Behind that, there's the little plastic cup that supports everything here. This is all loose stuff. And then there's a felt pad behind that. The felt pad doesn't normally go bad. Oftentimes, it's just, dirt and stuff you can brush off. Make sure you note the positioning of those parts. That's important to getting it back together. Also, the arm rides in this thing, which is supposed to be free moving. That guy right there. So sometimes that gets sticky and it doesn't properly move position. You can see on the hubs there the garbage that's accumulated that we need to clean off. Likewise on the hub here. On occasion you need to lubricate this hub, but this one's in really good shape. So we'll just leave that one as is. So let me show you the new tire. I realized that the video may have just flipped, but hopefully it didn't. And there's our new idler tire. There we go. This is from Van Hurban, I think it's H-U-R-B-A-N, Van Hurban, anyways. It's just new 3D silicone. It's a little bit better than the original idler. They have belt kits and stuff too, but I've heard mixed reviews about them, so I get the belts and the rollers from Black Reel, but they seem to make a pretty good tire. FixYourAudio.com also has the tire, if you know the dimensions, but I've had hit or miss with those lasting. But the silicone ones apparently last a little bit longer. You just have to do a little more of a cleaning prep before you put them on there. But anyways, let me get the camera set up and I'll see if I can show you about getting the old tire off. It's a little bit of a chore, but not impossible. Alright, so here is our little tire. Hopefully it'll focus on me here. Let's see if we can add some light too. Normally if the tire is supple enough, you should be able to walk it. See how I can peel it back? Walk it over the hub like this. It appears that somebody has done a modification. Look at that. They've got a second tire underneath to boost the height of the old tire that's wore out, because that's original rubber right there. It's starting to get a little hard. If it's really brittle, you usually end up having to cut it away. So I'm really hesitant. See, if you look at the difference between the inner diameters, you can see just looking at it that the orange one has a smaller inner diameter. So this one just, it was starting to slip, and so they thought that by boosting the diameter, they could take care of that. And this is like really hard on here. I don't want to mess up this surface. I'm just going to deal with it as it is. I think that's the wisest choice, because I don't actually want to crack the plastic underneath it or do anything that could be detrimental to it. Trying to see if he did like rubber tape or what. Yeah, it looks like rubber tape. Let's see if we can't peel this old stuff off of here without damaging anything on the plastic. This is a clever idea, but it's only a short-lived, it's a temporary thing. Yeah, he glued this on here. We're just gonna, quite a bit of it actually. But yeah, you should see bare plastic like this. Just lay that down over there, and then you should be able to work the new tire on the hub. So this was like a last-ditch effort. It was starting to degrade in performance, and they decided to boost it a bit. And then you kind of got to work your nail down in here to get it to seat into the hub, into the track. So don't trim your fingernails the night before, otherwise this ain't going to work so well. But you can see it's in there. And if we compare the diameters to the old tire, it's hard to see, but you can see the edge of the silicone tire just comes up above where the black used to be. So the black did shrink ever so slightly. But that's the replacement of the idler wheel, which is kind of crucial. So there it is in its nice pretty glory. So you can see that there's some dirt and stuff in the hole there for the hub. So we're going to try to clean that out a little bit. We're also going to clean the shaft on which it goes, which also has some gunk there. You want to make sure that's free of any garbage, and put a little tiny drop of oil on that shaft so that that idler turns absolutely freely. You can put some lateral force on these hubs to make sure that they're not sticky or full of bad grease. They just need some alcohol and a Q-tip to kind of clean them up. And then we'll put the belt on once we've got everything situated and see how easily it turns. Alright, so I cleaned off what I could with a Q-tip and alcohol to get the gunk off. There's still some staining here, but scraping at it doesn't really change anything, so it's pretty much is where it is. We're going to put a tiny little drop of oil on that post there. Put our spring back down. And of course it's going to get caught up in that now. And I tried running some cotton fibers through this to get it to where I wanted it cleaned out, but I don't know how successful I was at that. Let me just double check that it spins freely and stuff. I'm getting it all messy now. I'm going to have to clean that up, but yeah, I'm just going to make sure that it's ready to use. Hold on. Okay, so I double checked that everything is free moving. I got some oil on there. Got the fiber washer and the C-clip on there, which requires very careful dexterity. So I didn't want to so much as breathe funny unless that little clip goes flying, and then you're going to have a problem. So you can kind of check this by rocking the hub back and forth here, and you can check on how easy it is to turn that. In one direction it'll turn the hub one way, in the other direction the other way. It has really good grip. It shouldn't be slipping. In fact, if you want to put a little bit of drag on this, and just see how easy it is to stop. This one's not easy to stop, which is good. Opposite direction, grips really well. So the idler portion in this sense is done, and that grips really well. So we do need to put a belt on here now, and we do need to replace this tired counter belt. I'm not really happy with that either, but then this part, at least, this part will be done, and then we can reattach it to the body. Now, on addressing the belt, I used to use square belts on these things, but I found that actually a small round belt works better. It grips better, it doesn't have problems with traction, but Black Reel sells the belt kit, and they also use a round belt, so it's just a matter of slipping this in here. It's kind of hard to do this one-handed. Just get it over the hub and into the groove of things. Let me get my little tweezer majigus here. That will help. And I know I'm not great at holding the camera still, but this is the reality of it. Once we get our belt in here. Now the reason why this has to be something that provides a lot of traction is because it does a whole lot. It not only maintains the real torque during playback, but it also has to provide a ton of torque during the fast wind cycle. Yeah, so really you have to push this up. This requires two hands, but we're doing it. And then we'll just lift up here on this guy seated in the pulley, and then work it around. Yeah, anyways, you get the idea. Let me get this seated and then I'll show you. This will at least provide us a better view. And there you go. So now, whenever I move the motor in either direction, we can see that it transfers to the hub. And there's our back tension clutch down there. It's not moving. So the counter one's a lot easier, obviously. We just swap it out. Now, I'm not really happy with the counter belt that they sent. I think it's a little small. We'll see how tightly it pulls. It could just be an optical illusion. I'm used to that super loose one. But let's see here. Yep, that's way too tight. Can't use that. So, hang on. I think I have another spare here. Yeah, okay. So I do have another good used belt. Let's see if this should be a 3.7 inch roughly. It should be good enough. Okay, so this will work. Let me see if I can show you so you guys can see it. The way that you know if the belt's going to be decent is if it starts to get taut right as you're coming up on the half part of the pulley here, just enough to fit over there. Because this turns the motion sensor, so this is really important. The other one was really sloppy. This one at least is going to work okay. And then, out of curiosity, well, let me show you the difference here. Let's show you the difference between the round belt and the square belt. Maybe that will better explain things. If I use the square belt, it's not going to have the torque transfer. It's a little sloppy. I don't like it. So the round belt's a little bit firmer. I do stretch it manually with my fingers a little bit before I put it on, just to kind of get it readily seated better. And it could be that this just isn't going to work all that great, but usually it does. The round belts I like better. Okay, so that one's done. So what we're going to do is put this back into the transport, and then we can work on the pinch rollers and the other stuff. Alright, so now that we've got our plate back in with our reel motor and our part of our direct drive back, and now we can focus on replacing the pinch rollers. Another important thing on this deck. So here are your pinch rollers, and the common thing that really goes wrong with these in this day and age is they get really hard. They get really hard, they're not soft anymore, they're not supple, and they cause problems with wow and flutter. Now they're a bit of a pain to remove on this. The left one, you have to maintain the height of that. So you see where the top of that threaded shaft is with a nylon nut there? You want to measure the clearance between the top of that nut and the top of the shaft. Because if you don't have a alignment tape, alignment jig, you're not going to be able to set the position of that pinch roller very well, and it's not going to work out in the end. Now, there's a little bit of controversy to this because a lot of the replacement rollers you buy, the take-up side is bigger than the supply side. And I'm not thrilled about that. It's not really changing anything because it's determined by the diameter of the capstans and not by the diameter of the rollers. And there is methods to keep all this in line. Push the lock out the way there. But yeah, if the roller's too big, you've got a bit of a spring tension there to hold it back against the capstan to make that work. I'm sorry I'm shaking this so much, guys. It's hard to hold this thing and explain it all while I'm doing it. And if I just set the camera down, then you're just going to see that. Which, I mean, I guess that kind of works. But another thing is they get out of round. Sometimes you can spin them and see it. They get a little bit out of round. And the wow and flutter kind of goes to crap. The first thing I'll do is I'll poke them. And I'll see how hard they are, how firm they are. These ones are pretty much a rock, so they're not going to yield any kind of real performance. But you have to press them in and out. So you need to very carefully punch this shaft through so that you can get the old one out. The new one has a nice fancy bearing and stuff like that, so that's, that's nice. But if these were soft, you could refurbish them maybe, just kind of do them up that way, but these ones are absolutely hard as a rock, so I don't really trust doing that. So we'll start by doing this side first. We'll take this off. There's a C-clip here, and then it's hard to really see. We have to pick up the camera again. But there's also a spring, a retention spring, that's holding it in down there. Take note of where that position is too. That's your pinch roller arm tension. There's another spring here. That's part of the return. There's all this stuff here that you have to keep track of. So it's all really important. You can see this one here is absolutely hard and slick. But pinch rollers are crucial for good cassette performance. You're going to want to replace them. And that's going to be that. We'll start with this one, take it off, and punch it out and replace the wheel. And in the kit, you want to use the larger of the two diameters for the take-up or the right side, and the smaller of the two for the supply side. Try to use the large one. Obviously, you're going to come into contact with this tape guide, and it's not going to work. But yeah. So I'm going to pop that C-clip, get this off, and I'll show you what it looks like. So FYI, you get the first C-clip off, and you take the bottom wiring cover off, which just pulls off, by the way. It's just this guy here. It just pulls off. you're going to find that if you just do this E-clip up here, that one there, and then try to pull this off, you're going to run into this as an impediment. So you need to take this loose too. Yes, it is a guide, but it will bottom out against the back of the bracket there unless you take it loose too. So we're going to take loose the second C-clip, and then we can move that bottom bracket forward as we pull the pinch roller arm off to make it accessible. Alright, so the second E-clip is off, which is an utter pain, by the way. So now very carefully pull this forward. You don't have to take it off all the way. You're going to pull it forward. It's going to want to pop up the pinch roller arm. Watch. So I pull this forward, comes off its cast, wants to push that up. So now you want to pull down on this as you remove the upper pinch roller arm with your finger here. Work them both out at the same time until this post clears back here, and now you see you can get that out. And don't lose track of this guy because you're going to need him. But for the moment, we can move this back and we can focus on this pinch roller arm. And like I said, you're going to need to pop this out. One other obnoxious thing often is that you may need to add some spacers because the new pinch roller supplied is ever so slightly narrower. But there's ways to make this all work. This seems hard, but I wonder if it would clean up. But it does not pass the fingernail test. You see the crease that I just made in it. So, yep, that's a fail. So we're not going to use this one at all. And basically, I'm going to get an awl or a punch and just pop this out, and then we can remove it. But I'm going to need some ample space to do that, so it's not going to be on camera. Okay, so I punched it out the majority of the way. So now you should be able to just kind of lightly tug on this. Maybe grab your favorite pokey tool and kind of push it through. And then take note of what side goes where. So there's our shaft there. When I take this out, the little spacers are going to fall. Just like that. And so there we are. The old pinch roller is away. And it's in poor shape. And just side by side here, you can see the new one's close. It's a hair shorter than the other one, so we may not need to use the spacers depending on where the offset is. But the installation is just the reversal. So let me see if I can do this without screwing it up. Let's get our bracket. And the best way to do this is we're going to start by feeding the shaft in, putting the first spacer in, getting it to hold in place like this, and then put our roller in, push the shaft in further until we see it start to protrude the other side like that. And then get your favorite tweezers and very carefully insert the next spacer without dropping it. This is the tricky part. And push through. Requires a little bit of dexterity, but there we go. And then we just press this back in, and let me just do that. We got a tiny bit of play here, but that should straighten up when I get it pressed back in. So let me finish pressing it in, and now we've got our fancy supply side pinch roller, which is all up in there now. And so installation is reverse. We're just going to bring this out, push it down, get this started in that little niche there. Oh, the little fiber washer wants to crawl off here. Hold on. Let's get this back on here. Trying not to lose all of my parts at once. Let's bring this out. And you will probably have to push on this retaining clip here to get it past. Getting everything to play together is the hard part. And then you got to kind of push it all back together at the same time. So there we go. That's back in the correct place. So now we just reinstall our C-clip here, our fiber washer and C-clip here, and then we can move on to the harder one, which is this guy here. So let me get those C-clips back on because I need to get the camera out of the way so I have some better control of it. Okay, so there we are with our right pinch roller mounted. Now we need to work on this one. Same thing, you want to pop the C-clip out from underneath the bottom one here. This one, you want to take a machinist rule and again measure. You'll want to measure between the top. It's hard to focus on this thing. So this one works better. Yeah, the top of that nylon washer and the top of the threaded post. Now, if you have a cassette jig that you can set all the heights and everything with, it's not a big deal. But if you're just winging it, then you definitely want to take that measurement. It's usually about 1.5 millimeters, maybe a hair shy of 2 millimeters, but yeah, 1.5 millimeters really. And that's under spring tension. So you also might want to make sure that there's no Loctite creeping around the head of that thing, because that will chew it up as you take it out. But I've already scraped away the Loctite on this one, so it's just a matter of popping the E-clip, loosening that nut, and then we'll be able to take this one off. And then there's the tape guide up top with that Phillips head screw there that you need to take out so that you can get to the pinch roller. And it's the same process as the other one. You just punch the old one out, put the new one in. So let me get that loose, and then we'll get to this one. Alright, so now we got the nylon nut off. As you can see here, there's also a little fibrous wash that needs to come too. And we got our C-clip off the bottom. And it's just the same procedure. We move this down a little bit as we pull it out. I'm going to get in here, pull this down as we move it out. Close to the end, but you don't really need to take it off completely. Like that, and then we pull this out. Now don't lose the spring that's trying to pop off behind it because it is under spring tension. But work this off. Alright, and that fiber washer is going to try to come off the back, but I don't want it to. And there we go. So that's what happens when it comes off fully, is that it's just more of a pain to put back later. I'm just going to keep it here. And then what you want to do is you want to take that Phillips screw out and the tape guide out. There's been a lot of chooching and rubbing going on there. Not very good. That's pretty easy to remove this. Yeah, this comes off. And it is keyed there, as you can see. And now we're back to this again. And if we do the fingernail test on this one, we can see it leaves a nice indentation there. So again, this rubber's trash. We're not going to use this. Not going to try to resurface it or anything like that. It's a waste of time. The rubber's compromised, folks. Get rid of it. If you really want to spend some real coins, send these back to Terry's Rubber Rollers and he'll rebuild them for, I think, about 75 a piece. So yeah, I mean, you can do 75 a piece. You can do black reel. I don't know if Athens sells these or not. I haven't looked. Well, anyway, let me punch this one out and we'll replace that as well. Alright, so I got the punched out, and it's just like the last one. We're just going to pull the shaft through. And the little spacers are going to want to come with it. So I'll just let them drop. And there's our old crummy pinch roller that's out. And let's go ahead and compare with the new one. New one's got an actual roller bearing in there instead of just a sleeve bearing, so that's kind of cool. But again, installation's just reverse of the other. So, go ahead and get our shaft. I think I can pick it up here. There we go. Almost dropped it. And we'll just push this in, get it started. And put our first spacer in here. Like that. Pull back on it a bit. Put our pinch roller in. Push it through. And we'll get it to just protrude out a little tiny bit. Just like that. And then comes the fun part of getting the second. Let's see, where did I put my dealy bobs? There we go. We got to get the second spacer in here without dropping it or whatever. And this one's much tighter clearances than the supply side, so this one's going to fight you. And normally I'd use like hemostats, but the hemostats don't work in this location because of the tightness of it. So it's going to suck getting this in here. You definitely have to be very patient. We're going to pull back on that shaft just a little bit more. Yeah, this is your dexterity challenge for the day. Let me reset the position of that. Because you have just a little hair's breadth of distance here. And sometimes if you're clever you can kind of wedge it into place. I keep pushing the shaft in here and I don't want to do that. I'm actually going to try to spread this apart a little bit. This is the hard part right here, getting this all in here and working. That's why I did the take-up side first, because that was the easy one. And it's kind of hard with the camera sitting here, so I may have to move it off camera. And it does clear. You can see it does clear. There it is underneath the ledge right there. Now we have to very carefully work this in. I gotta pull back on the shaft again because I keep pushing it through. I'm trying so hard not to have this thing shoot off into the atmosphere. And there we go. I should just be able to push that shaft in there. It's just wanting to fight me now. It's because we're a little bit off alignment up here. Just push down on that. And I just knocked it out. Yep, just knocked it out. That was good. So you can see a lot of frustration in order to get this thing in here. So I'm going to move the camera just because it gives me a little bit better dexterity and get this finish pressed in here, and then we can work on putting it back in the transport. But you really got to have the patience. If you don't, you're going to break something, or it's going to go flying off into the distance and you'll never see it again. So take your time, and you can do it. So there it is in all of its glory. It took me about another 10 minutes on top of that to get everything in there and happy. So take your time, guys, because if you lose those little spacers or something, it's hell to try to find something to put in its place. But that pinch roller is assembled, well, except for the tape guide. We'll put the tape guide back on there and check clearances and all that sort of thing. Make sure it's not going to rub on the tape guide. So let me get a screw back in there. I put this down for a second. And there we go. So we got our, everything's all assembled there. I find it strange how that's chooched like that. I don't recall that being supposed to be that way, but who knows? I could be wrong. So now we're just going to have to put it back on here. I harpooned myself with the tweezers. That's really fun here. I don't know if you could see that, but right at where my nail comes together here, stuck myself with those sharp tweezers. Ow! Yeah, don't do that. So let's go ahead and put this back together. And just remember that your fiber washer and your spring has to go behind this thing. We can pull this out, get this started in here, in a little notch. It's going to fight me, I'm sure. Push forward on the little metallic spring thing so it clears. Actually, let's try something different here. Let's just pull this guy out, since I have the leeway to do so. Pull this guy out, seat it on here. And that makes it a little tiny bit quicker. Just have to keep everything in alignment as you put it on. Yep, that's going to fight me. Remember, you got to push this thing all the way back up against the block. There we go. Okay. And then we put our C-clip in here and we reset the height back to what it was on this guy. Alright, so I need to get the camera out the way so I can get the tools in to secure the C-clip. Okay, so we're all squared away here. Now a little pointer, if you do forget the height of this thing, this nylon washer down here, this guy right here that I've got my fingers on, you can kind of square up the tape guide with the head, and you can see I'm pretty close. It just needs to come out a hair. And then you line it up with the head gap, which are pretty close on. So I can put my test tape on it and deal with that, but otherwise that's a rough estimation of where that guide should be. So the rollers are done. Our idler's done. Our two belts up here are done. So now it's just a matter of reassembling the capstan and putting the little belts on there. We're going to oil up the capstans and reinsert them in here and start putting all this back together. And then in our next video, we can actually focus on powering it up, testing it, and see how well we did in dealing with things like speed and wow and flutter and tape wander and stuff like that. So let's get to putting the capstans back together, and then in the next video we'll do some final assembly, put it in the deck, and see how well it works. Okay, so now that we've got it in this position, we're going to start by reinstalling the capstans. And we're going to start with the take-up side first, just the direct drive capstan. This is the keeper that'll go on the front here. I just keep it on there so that I don't lose it. It's a good thrust washer there. And this is a good time to clean these. I've already cleaned the capstans off. They're nice and shiny. Get yourself some isopropanol, 100%, 99%, whatever you can buy. Clean this, make sure it's nice and polished and happy. In the disassembly video, I noticed that there was no fibrous washer here. I can't find evidence of it in the service manual. So I'm thinking that the electromagnetic field of the direct drive is what keeps this from rubbing on each other, since there's no abrasive mark on the brass or anything like that. So I'm just going to leave that be. We're going to put our tiny little bit of oil on there, and then we'll place this down in here. You can see how that rubs right now. So that's, there we go. Let's point the camera at the right thing. We can see that rubs. So I'm going to pay attention to that, make sure that it's just not something I'm screwing up. And then we'll take our other capstan, which is the supply side, that's the belt driven one, which does have a thrust washer on it. And again, this one's clean, so we're just going to put our little bit of oil on it and drop it in. So let's make sure there's no debris on this magnet either. That would be bad. But we're going to reattach the... Oh, I know why. I forgot the thrust bearing. Duh! Hold on a second. So when you put the direct drive backing plate back on here with the coils, the magnetic force pulls up on it and floats it here, and then you have to reapply the thrust bearing, and the thrust bearing will keep it happy. So let me put the camera down and reassemble the thrust bearing and stuff, and then you can see what I'm talking about. So I've loosely installed the thrust bearing, but you can see that the thrust bearing and the magnetic forces are what suspend it there. But I have to take this back off to put the belt on the secondary capstan. So let me fit that, and then we'll go from there. So if you loosen that thrust bearing enough, you can get it off of there without having to take the entire screw out. But we're just going to go back down here. We're going to attach our belt, our nice, fresh capstan belt. Now, the machine will run without this belt, but it just won't sound as good. And we're just going to place that over there. Assuming I can do this one-handed. I might not be able to. Come on, get on there. No? Nobody? Nobody? Alright, I need two hands. Be back in a second. So as you can see now, we got our capstan and everything lined up. The capstan needs to come back a little bit more, just a little bit. But everything will correct once I get the thrust washers and everything in there right. Okay, so we're good to go on that one. You can see the secondary thrust bearing right there for the secondary capstan that has to go back in there. But yeah, we'll put our little plastic keepers back on, and then we'll focus on getting the solenoid and the actuator and all that back into place, which is a big pain because everything has to be aligned just right. And then we can check everything and make sure it's ready for final assembly. Alright, so the next part is this fun backing plate. And what you have to do with this is this little finger here has to activate, let's see if I can, has to activate that ledge down there. You can see if I push on this, push on that ledge, that activates the pinch rollers and such. So that's kind of important. And trying to get this all together and aligned while you're doing it really kind of sucks. But that's my goal, is to get that lever to properly actuate that lever there, so that when the solenoid pulls on it from this side, it will activate the pinch rollers, assuming that the tape lock is disengaged. So your best bet is resting your finger on this to emulate the solenoid being disengaged while you get everything into place as you push this down onto the transport and get that there. So, and there's your little thrust bearing for the secondary capstan. But anyway, so you got to get all that together and not screw up the alignment on it. So yeah, double-handed dexterity time. Alright, so there it is. It's on there. And I wish that I could show you a better angle of how the hammer's plunging down there. Ugh. Yeah, what a pain. I can't really get it to focus. But you see how it's kind of, it's pressing on the first tier, not the one to your left, the smaller one. That's where it presses. It's got to press there. So the way now that we discover whether you did it correctly or not is you're going to be the solenoid. And you're going to pull back on this arm here, and you got to make sure to disengage the cassette lock, which is this button here. So if we can pull back on that solenoid with the lock disengaged, and you can see the rollers come up like that, you're doing good. I just loosened something, so that's not good. But normally the solenoid holds that in place, which we're going to install in a moment. So what comes loose is you can see it coming up on the shaft here, so it needs to get pushed back down into place. It's coming up on that shaft, but once we get that there, we'll remount the solenoid, which should hold it there, and then we'll have less issues with that. So this, of course, brings us to the installation of the solenoid. And here's the plunger. And as you can see, we're supposed to nestle that linkage in here so that the pin goes through the fork. The pin's got to go through that fork there so that when it pulls back, it does work. So let me see if I can illustrate this, because this is dexterous too. So we have to disengage the cassette lock, and then we have to pull back like we're going to activate the heads enough to get this in here. You can let go of the cassette lock once the heads start to come up, and fit that in there like that. See how that's fit in there? Now you got to hold it because it's going to want to run away on you. It's going to want to fall out, and then you're back to square one. So now we're going to grab our solenoid, and we're going to slide it into position the best we can here. Like that. Hold it there because you got to put the screws in. Yeah, all this is, like I said, this whole repair requires incredible dexterity. You got to hold this stuff in place while you put it back together. And you got to get the solenoid lined up. I don't know if I can show you. Crap. See? Alright, we'll try this again. So solenoid comes apart. Release the cassette lock. push on this. Then we got to get the plunger back in. Alright, now we're back to where we were before. Let's get our solenoid up top again. And basically, I'm just going to line these holes up best possible here. And then I'm going to put the screws back in it. Boy, what a pain. And these use the threaded machine screws and not the self-tapping screws. And they are the short ones with kind of a flat top to them. Now I don't believe that this solenoid uses all four. I think it only uses 3 of the 4. And then we got to put that silly little rocker spring back in, which I think I probably should have done before I put this in. Oh well, we're here now. Let me just get this at least secured to a point where I don't have to hold it. Yeah, so at least I don't have to hold it. Alright, so the solenoid's up in there. And then there's this weird little screw, this weird little spring thing. Remember this? Remember when we took this apart? That grounds that little C-clip on the chassis there to this motor, this solenoid plate. So I'm going to stick another screw in there. And then we got to loosen that one and put the spring around it. Okay, so we got the screw out. Now I need to try to, you're basically putting the S part, riding it around that post there where the C-clip is, and that then attaches to that hole there, and it grounds the two chassis together. Why they did it this way, I don't know. They just wanted to be fancy, I guess. So let me get that in there real quick. So there you go. There's your weird little spring wrapped around that post there. It's grounding everything. It's a bit of a chore to put in there, but it's not impossible. So now let's reattach our wire terminal block over here, and then remount our board. Alright, so we have the transport reassembled, front and back. Got everything in here. Check the rotation of the capstan. There's no rubbing, there's no belt noise. This thing is ready to go back into the chassis. Now I'm not going to put the cassette clamper piece on until the very end, when it's in the chassis and I know that things are basically working, because it's too fragile of a part to keep taking in and out. But the transport is complete. We've replaced the parts on it, done the necessary maintenance. The next video will be putting it back in the chassis, actually running it so that we can see what's needed as far as alignment adjustments, etc. And then hopefully this thing will be good to go, because a lot of time's been spent in this one. A lot of time. But yeah, anyways, hope you guys have enjoyed this segment. More stuff to come.